Hello, America. All natures of groupings of humanity and the human species body, of individual bodies. There has stayed roles with a breaching method that took everyone to shock and awe. And then modern countries were founded while it was still entrenched. We have slavery laws, torture, extortion, and a method by that recorded overtly sickly distinctly against people and sickly non distinctly, and that was left out. And we have self value being and having been left out, how there were all those hyper additional laws against all natures of differences, all natures of similarity, all natures of difference, slash hyper difference. Because we are being shown that by nature's identity itself, it is projected that we are different from the other species' bodies, also of individual bodies with group differences slash differences. See, but the other species' bodies are not criminally foreign influence, and having blamed other things, others, ourselves, and valuing that while doing it now, and while being shown because of how we use remotely at countries A through Z. For example, there are countries that are both sides are right, the other side's wrong, and they're both leaving out the breaching method exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. That's why how there are homes in suburbs that were designed, as I learned in notes from Central Connecticut State University. They were designed before America's founders were even born. And there were laws that if you were even found out to have been speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations, they would do worse than just hurt you and everyone around you. And note that's jumping into the cycle, like relative to economics and people's needs to get, and but per nature of debate regarding anything, this was is what was is used remotely because it contains quality slash qualities, aspect slash aspects, and it contains nature and the parts of its complete identity. That identity which is not ourselves. It is not the bodies of the other species' bodies. And they are distinct from ourselves. And they are simultaneous with ourselves. But it is also per this further, therefore hyper simultaneous, so to speak, and per nature itself needing a scientific value here. There is a complete identity of all space slash existence that we are only capable of discerning the smallest, the finite part, group parts of, and it only so as an extent, it only not that, not that much. But wherever we have a subject this way, individually grouped simultaneously, as it is as a value slash value progression, is bound three ways distinctly from how it is bound. Five ways, and the difference of that is also manifest. For example, the cell nucleus and or the differentiation between the cell body as it is manifest and another aspect, identity of itself, part of itself. Nature will call the nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall slash S. They have discernible coming through them gases in their mixture about positive and negative to our perception. Everything being its body too. No, its identity relationship to itself, complete, comes with any subject, individually grouped them together, and that's important because It is that identity of possession distinctly over the smallest finite detail, and also with perception of everything in correlatively slash hypercorrelatively, we can be led by that which is true always, doesn't leave out the smallest finite detail. And so we have means to instantly show, just with black people's whites of eyes, how that was left out. See, there's a breaching method in the room, needing fights, needing insidious natures of counters to that, to such, like counters to racism. In other words, this is a breaching method that employed the suburbs tactically denatured. The nature debate contains quality aspects of nature. Again, that haven't been used remotely. This breaching method used to sense, and still using the sense, self-valued roles with the use of James Madison's words, leaving out what they declassified about that, and the plan itself, which is to force the rest of the founders as non-Native Americans and as Native Americans, but with Native Americans. Native Americans were already fighting with Native Americans. But every Native American, there were verbally, and then before physically, there are proofs, and it is more practical and probable to convict. We're not to take counter positions because they prevent us at all locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species body is, because they have prevented to themselves anyone from speaking about predicate acts and/or predicate acts methods properly about American history, because nature has itself has shown us means to since we were little kids, but that is sensed. In other words, through forgiveness is because we're supposed to pay attention. There's a breaching method involved here at locations, areas, and states, every single place the human species body is. The species body of individual bodies, all group differences being generated, just like with the other species. There's a Trinity. In Allah's name, in Jesus' name, the body of Christ. This is Cipher also to be deciphered. But the nature of the debate about anything. So therefore, with religions, it is self-valued collusions, changing and faking the communications of Jesus Christ too. For example, as they knew they would, because in other words, everyone knows that they're doing that as the breaching method knew, but because at the beginning of the Old Testament it says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences come together. In the beginning of the Quran, it has a part that says the only thing that matters is if one is honest about, are they going to call the identity the hyper simultaneous Allah or not, and are they going to check? And for example, it qualifies that in a way counter to the nature of criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness that had been sustained from some ancient times since before modern religious messengers. From off campuses, it had sustained roles with itself that nobody wanted. It made exceptions because it made people have to counter things not knowing how to do it properly. And they blamed other things, others, or selves for things that they had to react to. And then they defended that. And this breaching method built on that. And it made that and natures of life progressions from all spots to all others. In other words, where its identity, this is playing where and how its identity unfolds. The identity that is shown to us with the black people's whites of eyes that can't be left out from science that has the right to use passions and emotions behind itself. For example, Offensively, this breaching method showed people how to think and to get away with it and make fights and keep nature debate about things that appear to be debatable, but they are not. And they're used. It's not about politics. It's about how mandated law, all natures of exception, too, are used as styles to cover up how fake exceptions on a mass scale and sequence shifts on a mass scale are collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, their family members, their sources, the same time, the same exact thing with the interbranch names, their campuses, their names, the news, the names next to them, the differences of the guilt with that. They're putting the same sequence shifts, the same ones involved with the World Trade Center attack that used effectively remotely the identities of America and of Saudi Arabia. See the World Trade Center, see trade associated with that name. We have natures of industries that have not been debatable. It's not debatable. See, there's things about the American history that are not debatable, and people offensively debate them, and they get away with this because they're quoting just because they read a book, just because some with your research. In other words, for example, Harvard Hospital has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People private with nothing, not even real health care. In other words, tactically delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence readings of American history. And since the Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Harvard Hospital in 1822, with slavery still entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. There is still other communicated than James Madison and the founders that he agreed to help and to use the plan of, and them as the face of James Madison. But there were and are three natures of Native Americans before this, relative to a sustained breaching method from since before modern religious messengers. In other words, the human species body of individual body sciences and the black people's things, this all goes together with hyperditional things. No, but people are changing and faking our words, especially regarding when we make predicate acts and predicate acts methods noted with our syntax, because that's what nature is showing us. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers, all sides of cases, then they have fake motivation. One of the things they have shared is use /s of location /s. So there are many, many names that, for example, the directors of agencies at countries A through Z. In other words, the campus is A through Z. They have distinctly communicated other for our founders and have been used from off locations, then through hyper additional motivations, trying to speak for positive or negative, economic, all their opinions. Those opinions are made wrong so they can pretend things are debatable and can, in other words, dishonestly and get away with it and pretend things in court. The courts are still guilty part two roles. That's what witch trials are about. No matter who made them up. They're about those torture, extortion, slavery laws entrenched before America's founders were born. And right through our founding, they did not have free speech. Everyone's syntax was measured and maintained. Roles with those crazy things, everyone against everyone, including when as helping each other the way he did, and syntax behind it. In other words, and value stream is behind it, because all that is used remotely by the breaching method. That needs to keep even too the scientific value of how that's one of the things that those crazy laws and that slavery was about true always. It was about a human factory nature breaching method. Hyper additionally, because nature stays hyper additional. It's also about a predicate acts delivery system method. Hyper additionally, it's also about a criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method. Hyper additionally, it's also about use /s of the differences /s of that. So people on a mass scale are styles, for example, that self-value others on a mass scale, pretending that they believe that politics have meanings that they don't. All kinds of digital crime acts and methods are mass prevented, anyone from telling on it. This breaching method has and has had all natures of economic, security, suffrage, wealth. The difference of that being used syntactically by the breaching method that uses any grouping of countries too. If you entertain locations, areas, and states, see, this breaching method made sustained roles with what no one wanted sustained roles with. And then religious messengers came about. But no one had free speech. That's why I never even heard it from anyone else, even though it says right in the beginning of the Old Testament, it's not a lot. Only defend right here with names of the people the sciences will come together. See, but the way the names of the people the sciences came together and grew was with this preaching method lower than their foundations and greater than them, where and how it counts. And then it's just fluent through all nations. See, but this the breaching method thought would, in other words, it's a breaching method that consciously is kept natures of styles of logic, like with economies. Our founders didn't pay attention to what they actually communicated. They communicated for us to pay attention to how the ground is tactically denatured to force ourselves onto a torture, extortion, slavery method, value nature system, tactical from natures to the extent we could discern. But again, that comes with its only increasingly valuable complete identity relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that. But to appreciate that as this hyper programming that we can, I don't know what the laws are, or if us even asking about communicate with the platform. God entered your life, body on. So, in other words, when it comes down to it, where it counts, like for example, there are World Trade Center predicate acts. Connecticut's Channel 3 News is in the process of confessing. In other words, they have people that are simultaneously pretend to other too. These are also wire crime acts and methods, but there are other ones too. These are also roles with making subject treatments where and how already there were collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases and with the courts themselves and the difference between them or the intelligence tied to them or where they live or next to them or next to the body dumping spots, next to the campuses, next to the, with child abusers, leaders of kids too, years apart. First forced, who are also involved with elderly homes, corners of streets. It's not just here or there. They're making fights and conversations between people, and they're ducking their roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones that are also used because their differences are also used. All natures of cultural difference and syntax. Our little styles, from the biggest to the little, this inside and used by this breaching method. In other words, culture is about this. Black pupils, whites of eyes. We have the same color eyes because of that, which has the other species' bodies with eyes distinct, non-distinct, simultaneous, but / hyper simultaneous too. Ugh. But we everyone should know instantly what I'm speaking about when I say /. because nature itself is and has been showing such. No, but we have and have had other communicate about what's practical and how the resolutions go, the natures of experts. They're already used with styles of where there are styles of readings of statutes and precedents, only known criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Forgiveness is an important part because there are sides that have been hurting each other, individuals and groups of countries, A through Z. We have been systems tactical ulterior than the employments by A through Z. By that system that communicates and shows increasing, plus its increasing value, relativity / hyperrelativity with where and how, why. Its identity is as an answer. Why there's a distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is not other species bodies. It is not our own. So the beginning of the Old Testament comes to the part that says that only defend we're here, but no one even knows it. And everyone pretends passions and emotions by the book. And they speak on crimes while still as collusions with that predicate acts with facts method, with that criminal insidiousness delivery system method, that torture, extortion, slavery method. It's manifest three ways as an identity theft, fraud, slander method on a mass scale /S. All groupings of countries, they come from locations, areas, and states that have had entertained descriptions of practical reason use among them Lacan's phrase that can't defend their definitions of that and their applications by it and afford to be, let alone to protract. Syntax with convictions proper, let alone convictions with blame, even when correct, leaving out the breaching method. Black pupils. So there are three natures of Native Americans we have to observe, as nature shows us how to observe, just being a human body of the individual species body. There was a sustained breaching method. In fact, we're going to the first counter position. In other words, of the ancient gaming system is that it is. No, I'm going to take counter positions relative to the like the body of Christ. There is only an extent of the body of the hyper simultaneous that we can discern, the identity of all space / existence. But again, that space comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. And so these words / values are values / value nature, for how ancient pantheism was more probably and demonstrably appreciated, tactical ulterior than people could afford, because people have been propagated to self-valued roles with what no one wanted propagated. We long water not to have it through plastic. Debates and time treatments and excuses relative to why and to how they have problems with pipes with lead and old things like that, and why they had the problems then. And all looks towards the future. You guys can't do it proper. You have collusion /S with tactically delusions wrought and criminally foreign influence readings of the sciences, where and how it counts. Many ways. Vaccines. So I'm not even a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but not police form. In other words, I caught them using the courts. I'm not criminal either. In other words, I caught the courts forcing crimes with their criminals and with people next to the locations, next to body dumping spots, next to campuses, next to news, at news, involved with putting fake transcripts, all kinds of mass delusions too. Again, into databases. It's not an insult. These are observable delusions that our experts have and have had. Connecticut's Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with themselves. WTNH has roles all along Route 175 with their sources recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also involved with with people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, who are also involved with cliques at elderly homes, next to elderly homes, next to the state corrections offices, next to the state judicial branch offices, at those locations. These are from the founding locations where they had the witch trial placed right where George Washington had to come and to counter extort and to force them to become the rest of the founders. See, but we have other talk. There's a nature of feeder as criminal insidiousness / hyper criminal insidiousness with all positive treatments and with all negative treatments. And so there is behavior racketeering worse than war crimes, also associated with the Institute of Living, which is like a hospitals form of like a diaspora with the mental health and with police forms. And increasingly, there were a whole bunch of police forms in unmarked intelligence families. And Christopher Cohen, he's another one. In other words, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with mayors and with a whole bunch of different countries, involved with predicate acts with facts method /S. Forgiveness is to focus on those predicate acts. See, but they've been putting fake things in databases, people tied to them. As timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones are recorded. Facebook is ongoing with confessions about this and simultaneously pretending other. There are judges, prosecutors, and their family members personally and professionally involved with proven digital child abusers, leaders of kids, forced, and their roles putting fake things in databases, seating juries, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw till, criminally foreign influence campuses is relative to that. While till on-off corrections and judicial offices are collusions with a whole bunch of natures of sick people at crime scenes from the prisons, needing to hide life progressions with those spots, like the spot of the serial killer, involved with a whole bunch of people involved with wire crimes of Wethersfield police, forging and switching names with the courts, their Facebook page. The Facebook page in the Britain Superior Court is involved with a whole bunch of people with Harper Court and Connecticut's District Court, involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants at West Hartford locations, where they confessed to me and asked for a request for help. And I didn't make it clear how I was going to give that help. And then he brought in one of my military sources, Eric Burgess, brought one of the domestic ones. He brought in Dean Judd's son. I had no communications with him. These are people before the World Trade Center attack that were involved intercities and interstates with intelligence from Wethersfield, Connecticut, too. A whole bunch of people. And it's from off their location. These on a mass scale, it's where they make people, in other words, they already had all sides of criminal and civil cases. And the courts involve collusions. Even it's recorded when they describe what witch trials are about, leaving out how the slavery laws were about there. North and South colonies, sickly distinctly, leaving out how they were slavery laws against everyone. In other words, we know that, but we have it separated because this breaching method put a feeder / hyper theater. Because I say hyper theater because the breaching method made roles with itself sustained, so it has a whole bunch of breaching methods as styles of syntax, tactical terror from that way that is hyper-native pure, that which shows us Native Americans sickly distinctly That's why sickly distinctly president slash chief. Presidents have obligations as chief too to appreciate. There's breaching methods, difference, racketeering, making everyone go have fights with ourselves, leaving itself out. There's the breaching method itself, because it is one of the things true always that slavery was about. A human fact should be nature breaching method. If anyone denies that, that would have inherent to, active to, progressive to demonstrations of the same thing. Demonstration slash as of the same thing. How are you? So if you type Jesus into my app, it would spell back. Juxtapose energy C. You're C. In other words. And this is because of how we are a hyper additional nature. Nature itself is showing us how it is most probable and demonstrable, how it's most practical to theorize, let alone to convey, that all matter was generated by understanding how it's showing us its identity to an extent. Comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, equally value and the value of that. And those three are equally increasing relative to to the Trinity. Also relative to the Trinity, discern how three parts of time. There's the part of time when you were a kid. You know there's part of time, you know there's nature. You know we need to eat. There were things that are true always from the past, now active. And there are the seasons that are not even here. You already know about them. It is showing us three parts of time that are grouped. And we know there was a time before this that we know we don't know about. And we know that there was a time beyond this we know we don't know about. And when we limit it, because time is bigger than truth, you know, except for where the truth is that there is an identity of hyper simultaneous. And there is science, but the science that nature shows us with black pupils, whites of eyes, and with other species bodies with eyes distinct. You know, even bugs have quality aspects of nature, consciousness, distinct from ourselves, but also non-distinct. Again, simultaneous slash hyper something. Its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that, three ways equally increasing with the rest of itself, because we are perceiving from inside its complete volume, the complete identity of all space slash existence. So in other words, in nature, the individual voices of leaders of countries, they're above locations, areas, and states. There have been suits and ties, counters, and exceptions that had other communicate for their country's founders and for ours, per a method that kept and keeps other things, others, or selves blamed for things that it caused and keeps, even if it's no longer here, a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. If it is, that's what we have to call it. Something we all agree on. Not a devil alone, or not a shaitan alone. This had played differences, tactical ulterior from how nature used them. See, now systems, anything that feels good, it's going to cost you. Everything is inverted. We are through systems not led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. This is the identity that has the parts of speech, the parts of grammar, for example, as invisible but still discernible, but has why and how. We need more. We need to appreciate more than one name for a verb. We need to appreciate that grouped too, the participle natures, the present participle and the past participle, and it's appreciation of time / forever nature. And the infinitive, which is a phrase where the verb is taken out of its, it's not in a main verb form. It's inflected, and a predicate. That's why we have the predicate, because that's what we're looking for with our mind, where we're dealing with the conjunction / hyperconjunction between, the main verb, in the identity of value / value progression that is all finite details in the order of the finite, the group, and the simultaneous package, as we have learned, in other words. But each of the sciences, including English grammar, it's not legitimate. There are not legitimate uses of for example, where they say good writing is vigorous and concise, is said in Strunk and White's Essentials of Writing. But on a mass scale, people's words are faked and changed when they use short words right. In other words, and the way this is gotten away with is per phenomenon everyone could understand. I discerned it. One of the ways everyone has to understand it, though, is I read that we were supposed to refer to our founders as plural behind James Madison and his plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan. And then they forced the rest of the founders. And everyone wanted to, let's protest T-tax, etc. Meanwhile, slavery is entrenched distinctly northern colonies, southern colonies, against everyone. All kinds of crazy laws against everyone. This preaching method measured and maintained roles. It showed them how they had roles. Those same roles that no one had wanted. They had sustained roles with that. Then it showed them how it used it and how they needed to hide that at other locations / S. And it knew that, so this is a roles with the social structure. The social structures of everybody. The sociology at Central Connecticut State University, they have recorded roles with people involved when students and proven child abusers, leaders of the kids first forced years apart. There are more of them tied to those same people. And there were timed use / S of them roles as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. And there was conscious uses. There was conscious use / S. There were conscious use / S of America's identity and of Saudi's identity consciously for the same method that keeps a self-value roles hiding with the beginning of the Old Testament says, even though it says only defend right here. And the part that comes before it in the Old Testament, where the names of the people, the sciences will come before together. And where the identity of all space / existence is parsing through existence. So in other words, excuse me, cheers, I'm all out of tea. I don't know, why do you say it is based polymath? It's late, man. You watch the boxing videos. I missed the summer. In other words, I went to the gym the other day, but in other words, there's only one bag. There was like 3 kids sharing it. I shouldn't have let them just keep going. I just did a couple of rounds there, and I just shadow boxed at a gym. But I didn't even film it because you're supposed to film around. I don't like to do that anyway around people and stuff like that. But I have to take my YouTube on the road. In other words, I should be like virtual boxing from other spots. I just started learning programming. I just put up a app called it's an alphabet Decipher, but I couldn't figure out how to upload to GoDaddy the HTML properly. So I put it to ancientgamingsystem.com, the domain. You type in your name or a word, and it gives you the cipher of it. So, for example, Allah, because this is too the beginning of the Quran, just like the beginning of the Old Testament, it also comes with a part that says it's the only part that matters. And just like the difference between the people preserving the religion or attacking it, there are collusions too, some ways, keeping that from being no one even knows about that part. They both have a part that's so simple. It says only pay attention to this part, and no one pays attention. No one even knows that part. There's all this drama, all these years. Then they said, I don't know the words. And if Israel and Palestine are so small, all this time, in other words, there is another name in the room, or there was. So it is possible for both sides to be right when they're blaming each other. You know what I'm saying? Like with Russia and America, etc. All groupings of humanity, tactically ulterior from how it shows us its body this way. The body of Christ is with only the extent we can discern, because we are inside. But if we pay attention with every subject individually grouped together, there is 1/3/5 ways. Its identity is a possession over the order of the finite, the order of the grouped, the difference of what is grouped and how things are grouped per its system. Because this a breaching method employed nature's communications, assigned them to different communications. Now, as only nature has criminal insidiousness. So it took all to styles that could no longer afford to be, let alone to protract short words with convictions proper, let alone with guilt, with convictions, but let alone with the guilt with that. And it hides behind that. And then through all nations, there are proofs that there was a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, as what is being referred to distinctly as the devil, with Catholicism and Christianity, and I believe with Judaism too. I'm not sure. And as Shaytun and with other names, I believe it says with other names too. I don't know. I only read to the part that says I don't have to write. This is the only part that matters. It also says you're not supposed to play. It obligates the good Muslim not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. Obligates the mosque to not deny someone from being able to do that. And so the mosques and the churches should prepare too, because my words have been changed and faked regarding World Trade Center predicate acts. That again, news, both sides of criminal and civil cases, the courts themselves, the intelligence tied to them, foreign and domestic. They have collusion /S at and next to each campus I went, timed use /S of that, as rolls with names from off those campuses. And the difference of it with guilt. In other words. And that's where everyone has victim /hyper victim, but predator when people treat subjects. In other words, or ignore it. Because they're leaving out. Now it's evidence too, where and how. These are people out of the state corrections offices, judicial branch offices, and next to it, or driving by, involved also with wire crime acts and methods and mail crime acts and methods. that involved also partially some of those methods involve fabricating the transcripts. Wethersfield police pretended I had conversations with them as a kid and then as an adult. They have been doing this intercities with others too, attaching me to fake transcripts with themselves, faked audio and video at the Wethersfield police station, falsified police reports rolls on a mass scale, courts as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim used remotely, victim predator, hyper predator, predicate acts for facts methods, natures. At the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. It is recorded how that, in other words, this is why this is relative to what's going on with the borders. On a mass scale, they run into high live progressions at hospitals where they force mental evaluations. On a mass scale, one of the things that causes domestics, people that yell, is because of the crime methods that were that criminally foreign influence use slash S of all natures of investigators. Even things that every truth they used to lie. Everyone, black pupils. So we have black people's whites of eyes. We were supposed to see the whites of eyes and not to shoot until we could. But that means, for example, that's also Decipher because our founders, their words, they didn't have free speech. They declassified it. But we have without declassified. We have other taught. We have the value of something just because it's published. Pretended it means what it doesn't. We have things spoken that just because they're not published, they should not have to, they change and fake what people say about predicate acts. They assign people to think and use the value of voting where it does not have, where it's not valid. There's a whole bunch of ways that vote. In other words, one of the reasons that they never treated properly Native American rights and black rights, partially because they make white. How many countries are white? Different people don't even speak the same language, and they're classified as white because that breaching method kept the campuses from off them. It kept every mind from off all locations /S. Identity theft, fraud, slanders against themselves. And rolls with it as styles, blaming other things or others for nature's demonstrations of it. And then hyper additionally, because then nature's demonstrations of it with that too. Those roles, even though no one wanted it. And so that had been sustained against Native Americans. And it had already perfected itself since before modern religious messengers, which only did damage control. And in other words, we have their Decipher forbid its value in sequence. Sequence shifts on a mass scale. That which is collusion /S at all kinds of natures of crime scenes and campuses of all ages and natures of campuses, including fire campuses, medical campuses, and the difference of that. This breaching method uses differences because it's an inversion of we are being shown that hyper difference. It is the identity that has why. Hyper invisible, but still discernible as why and how we need to appreciate more than one word for a verb and why and how they are grouped that way, or how they are nature that way, and about time, which the infinitive is about time as the root in infinity. And so in other words, what kind of gym did you join? A regular gym. So most gyms don't have a punching bag, heavy bag. I wish more gyms had a heavy bag. It's not good to do it all the time though. I'll tell you one of the best things, one of the best aerobic exercises, especially women do not realize. It's the most efficient exercise, shadow boxing. And like if you use your jab, more than your other punches, you're gonna have it's gonna clean your style up if you ever do it. You know, in other words, everything comes off the jab. That's why they say that all kinds of through the years. Many different kinds of great trainers and fighters say everything comes off the jab. You don't have to land the jab. And if you're shadow boxing, it doesn't matter. It's just it still keeps you where you can get the better exercise because it keeps you cleaner where you can keep turning. You know what I mean? It's better than running. There's a Butterbean. I believe it's on YouTube. Butterbean, man, he was like they called him the king of the 4-rounders. He used to fight on ESPN. I don't know. And he had a whole bunch of 4-round fights. And then he hurt himself apparently by running. It's on YouTube, I believe. Butterbean. I don't know if you ever saw a Butterbean. Anybody? So people, we forgot what this is all the. In other words, the body of Christ. This would Decipher because it has a distinct identity of relationship to itself, the identity of all space/existence from outside of that extent we could discern, using what we know with any subject, is true always, not denying the slightest sequence shifts, not denying a truth or used for a lie or a fake motivation relative. We have to be led by what is true always and also positive unto itself. For answers, in other words, and what this shows is that they're making, Boolean logic. It shows that this breaching method employed the preservations that it knew would come back anyway of nature, when nature had shown the ancients before the sciences had become criminally foreign influenced / hyper criminally foreign influenced. Because there is that hyper additional identity of involvement / S. For example, relative wear the suits and ties are manifest simultaneously with wearing how the suburbs are manifest from America to Ukraine, to Russia to Ukraine. The suburbs look almost exactly alike, and they were designed for the torture, extortion, slavery of everyone A through Z, sickly distinctly at America's colonies, northern and southern, before America's founders were born. Sickly distinctly against black in northern colonies and southern colonies. And all exceptions employed by itself too, because responses to it and descriptions of things like reason, like names, it is used by the breaching method at all locations, areas, and states, every single place the human species body is standing. There was a hyper foreign presence that needs other things, others, or selves blamed. Even when, and they made exceptions, true, but everyone denying it. So in other words, it needs other things, others, or selves blamed for nature's demonstrations of itself. Because a breaching method is one of those things, true always, that slavery was about, a human fact sheet nature breaching method. But when we appreciate it that way, we come upon people with theories. Or two, we come upon people with the truths used exactly the way the breaching method employed them to be used. Tactically ulterior from how nature employed them. Those differences, black peoples. We have the black people's whites of eyes left out. The answers more come with this, because the other species bodies too have these quality aspects in nature being demonstrated to us. The way it demonstrates its body shown. In other words, the body of Christ is about too how hyper additional nature is being made. Nothing, even if something is made up, this science / hypervolume science is that way three distinct identities of possession over the finite, the order of the finite, and the difference of that to value, to relativity as itself. Relativity / hyperrelativity, because one way it values part of itself more as a simultaneous nature. One way it values itself more as a hyper simultaneous nature that will not mix. I mean, everything is it's a hyper simultaneous nature, but manifest this way, just like manifest the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall / S, and their appreciation of gases and their elements. Gas is positive when they are clear now, and water positive when it is clear. The hyper clear, the hyper invisible is present with the languages. The hyper conjunction, the hyper correlative comes with the correlative. This is what we are appreciating when we are appreciating the difference between the correlative conjunction or a subordinative conjunction. We're appreciating how they are a part of this hyper additional method where it makes more of itself the way it does, the identity of hyper simultaneous, where it makes more and more hyper invisible but still discernible. And this is what leads. Hyper programming can be led by this. In other words, all right, thank you, Gabe.